April 14, 1912, at 11:40 p.m., the most famous ship in history struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the ship was gone, taking more than 1,500 people with it. For over a century, the world has believed one story about that night. Almost none of it is the whole truth. The Titanic was not just a ship that hit an iceberg, it was a disaster that was built weeks before it ever left port. It was covered up by the people responsible, and it carried secrets that are still being uncovered today. This is what they never told you. The Titanic set sail from Southampton on April 10, 1912. What the passengers did not know was that a fire had been burning inside the ship's hull for 3 weeks before departure. A massive coal fire in Boiler Room 6 burned at temperatures high enough to weaken the steel walls of the hull by as much as 75% in that section. Metallurgy experts found a 30-foot-long black mark on the wreck's hull, evidence of sustained high heat burning against the steel. The ship's management knew about the fire before departure, and canceling the voyage would have been financially catastrophic. The tickets were sold, the coal was loaded from other ships, and the decision was made to sail anyway. When the ship left port, it was turned so the damaged side faced away from the dock and away from the crowd. The passengers walked up the gangway, not knowing the hull beneath them had already been compromised. Then came the iceberg. At 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted the iceberg and immediately rang the warning bell. The officer on the bridge gave the order to turn, and the ship began to turn, but it was too late. The collision lasted just 6.3 seconds, a glancing blow along the starboard side. Under normal circumstances, the damage might have been survivable, but the steel where the iceberg struck, weakened by 3 weeks of fire, buckled and split far faster than it should have. The damage was catastrophic from the first moment of contact. The ship had 16 watertight compartments, and it could survive 4 flooding, but that night 5 flooded simultaneously. The Titanic was sinking before most passengers knew anything had happened. Within minutes of the collision, the crew knew the ship would sink, including Captain Edward Smith and the designer Thomas Andrews, who was on board. Andrews calculated the ship had less than 2 hours, and yet for over 30 minutes no distress signal was sent. No order to load lifeboats was given, and no announcement was made to passengers. People were still eating in the dining rooms, still sleeping in their cabins, still playing cards. The White Star Line's wireless operators had been using the ship's radio to transmit paid passenger telegrams instead of prioritizing ice warnings. The radio operator of the nearby ship Californian had tried to warn the Titanic and had been told to stop interrupting. When the Titanic finally began sending distress signals, the Californian's radio operator had gone to sleep. The Californian was close enough to have saved everyone sitting motionless in the water, watching the lights of a large ship, yet doing nothing. The Californian's captain later said he did not know the rockets were distress signals. More than 1,500 people died within sight of a ship that could have reached them. There were lifeboats for only 1,178 people on a ship carrying 2,224, and many boats were launched less than half full. Lifeboat number 1 held 40 people capacity, and it launched carrying only 12. Some of the wealthiest people rowed away in half-empty boats, while 1,500 others drowned in 28-degree Fahrenheit water. The survivors were told to say nothing to the press as White Star Line lawyers waited on the rescue ship, preparing legal strategy before bodies had been recovered. In 1985, oceanographer Robert Ballard found the wreck on the Atlantic floor, celebrated as a triumph of exploration. What was not announced at the time was that the Titanic search was partially funded and covered by the United States Navy. The Navy was not interested in the Titanic. They wanted Ballard to secretly locate 2 lost American nuclear submarines. The Titanic search was a cover.